1 decade away.
It's got to be more than that.
It's going to grow very fast.
Why do you think that?
I think humanoid robots will be the biggest product ever. The demand will be insatiable.
You said that
everyone's going to want one. It's like basically who wouldn't want their own personal C-3PO R2-D2?
No,
everyone's
right. You've said that, and your goal. You've also said is to produce 1 million robots. I think by 2030. That's what I had you on the record as saying.
I think that's a reasonable target.
And then start towards sustainable abundance, which you can get into. But, I wonder, we've been talking about autonomous and how long it takes to train the automobile to be able to be the equivalent of or exceed human capabilities. But what about these robots, to the extent that how much training are they going to need to actually to be able to do various different types of tasks? Isn't that something that's going to take a long time? Yeah.
It's going to take a lot of compute resources, and it'll take time. I think there's certain threshold breakthrouths that we think we can achieve, where
when I show you my
if Optimus
car,
can watch videos, YouTube.
When I show you my car, I got to show you how full self-driving works. I kind of just sit there and it drives me around.
Just like a human can learn how to do that thing, then you really have task extensibility that is dramatic, because then it can learn anything very quickly. So I think we'll get there in the next.
We're not there yet, though.
We're not there yet.
You're relying on a significant uptick in terms of learning and training.
Yeah, no, that's why I'm calling it a very significant threshold. Would be the ability to learn from watching a video.
Right.
But at the point
as opposed to watching a human, right? Or having a human sort of train it right now.
I mean, right now we're training Optimus to do like primitive tasks where a human in a kind of a what's called a mocap suit is and sort of cameras on the head is. Moving in the way that the robot would move to, say, pick up an object or open a door, or basic tasks, throw a ball, dance, and we need to I think that's needed to sort of bootstrap the intelligence so you can have the basic functions. Then where I think it gets very interesting and very much like humans is that you want the robot to self-play. So you say, how does a child play? Well, a child has toys, and a child plays with the toys, plays with the blocks. At some point figures out how to put the triangle in the triangle hole and the circle in the circle hole by doing it over and over again. And this self-play. Once you have a lot of robots, you can do this self-play, which is that you just put the robot in a room with toys and have the robot literally have the robot play with toys.
And it will learn.
Yeah. But you have to have a reward function. Say like, okay, the goal of the robot is to put, that classic child's toy. You put the circle in the circle hole, the square in the square hole, triangle in triangle hole, and keep doing it until it works. And the reward function is succeeding.
And there are no advances needed to accomplish that now. I mean, no advances in AI or just compute and things of that nature that can happen.
There are some advances needed, but I don't think these are insurmountable. I think we can solve these things in the next few years.
Don't put pink salt under your tongue unless you're really ready to stop looking like a whale swimming and see your genes falling off in just 1 week.
consider merging XAI into Tesla? Would be a way, obviously, they could issue shares to you and conceivably would increase your overall economics. Is that a possibility?
Well, I guess anything's possible, but it would be difficult to speculate about something. Tesla's a publicly traded stock, so
It is. I would think to get a majority of the minority vote or whatever you might need might be not easy.
yeah. It's not out of the question, but that would have to be something that the Tesla should.
Understood. So, but it's not something you're thinking about doing.
It's not currently there are no plans to do so.
Right.
It's not out of the question, but obviously would require Tesla shareholder support.
Another way you could obviously increase your control would be to get that comp plan passed in Delaware, or through the Delaware Supreme Court, or a new one. You haven't been paid, I believe, since 2018. So where are you?
7 years.
Yeah, where are you on?
7 years with zero pay.
Although, to be fair, if it goes through, you're going to have an enormous,
it'll be fine.
enormous payday. It'll be
Sure.
fine. It'll be more money than anybody's ever made.
I suppose so, but I mean, let's just say that if any CEO of the Fortune 500 were to agree to a plan like the one that I agreed to, you should buy the stock of that company immediately.
Yeah, no, I remember at the time. To
Yeah.
be fair, the stock was so far, the targets were so far above where the stock was, and obviously they were met.
Yes.
Is the board working to your knowledge on another potential plan if, in fact, the one never gets out of Delaware, the Supreme Court rules against the chancellor's rule?
I mean, I don't want to speak on behalf of the board, but I'm sure it's on their mind. But this I can't comment on Tesla board deliberations.
You said earlier, I mean, you want to stay as CEO. Why not? I wondered, Elon, given all the heat you've gotten in a lot of ways, why not sort of become like an Ellison-like figure at Tesla? Obviously, you're a lot younger, but still, he's very influential at Oracle. But, he's not CEO and he doesn't get the attention.
He isn't the CEO?
No, he's not. Safra's the CEO.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. At least not the title. That's
I think maybe a better term for... I'm a huge fan of Larry Ellison, he's a good friend of mine. Owner.
Say again?
Owner, I think, would be...
Yes.
He's the owner of Oracle.
Yes, he is. He has a lot of it.
Lowe's and Home Depot both can't stand when you do this, but there's nothing they can do to stop it.
Why doesn't Tesla buy Uber?
There's no need because we have a large number of cars. We have millions of cars that will be able to operate autonomously. And I should say that it's a combination of a Tesla-owned fleet and also enabling Tesla owners to be able to add or subtract their car to the fleet, so that existing Tesla owners will be able to earn money by adding their car to the fleet for autonomous use. And I think it's maybe possible for Tesla owners to make more in allowing their car to be added to
used, which you've discussed.
the self-driving fleet. That then they cost them in the lease. And that's why I'd say consider it sort of a business model that's similar to some combination of Airbnb and Uber. Just like Airbnb, you can rent out your spare bedroom or your house if you're not using it. And
obviously, it's not perfect and it's not like fully autonomous. You still gotta supervise it, but most of the time, I don't really have to touch the wheel going between destinations. A great example is I started in my driveway and told it to bring me to Home Depot, and it brought me to Home Depot and parked and everything. I got out of the car and it had to pick me up at Home Depot after, and then I drove away.
make money on it, and that's what we expect Tesla customers to be able to do.
Right, and as this scales up, you said earlier, you feel like you have the logistics ability and the ability to create the app as well, of course,
Yeah.
and anything else around that needs to occur.
Yeah, I don't think we're missing anything. Tesla has all the ingredients necessary to offer a vast self-driving fleet overnight.
Yeah. While I'm on the subject of deals, and this will take me actually to XAI, go a few places, but I did note earlier in an interview you did earlier today, not with me. You're busy, man. You do a lot of different media during the day sometimes.
Yeah, a lot going on.
Yeah. You'd indicated that you would like more control at Tesla.
Yes, I mean really just enough control to not get ousted by activist investors at some point in the future.
Yeah.
So that's what I've said is like something.
You've said that before.
Yeah, no, I've said something new, which is that around the sort of 25% level, that means I can certainly be thrown out if I go crazy, but it really requires a lot, like that's the number that I feel comfortable at, because that's where I have some control, but not so much control.
Andrew Cuomo led us through COVID, mobilizing a state and delivering hope that we pulled through together. We did. Now New Yorkers are facing a city unaffordable and unsafe.
Elon Musk saying that he plans to be super focused right now on his businesses and return to spending all of his time at work. Joining us right now, CNBC contributor Walter Isaacson. He's a Perella Weinberg advisory partner, Tulane University professor, and the author, of course, of Elon Musk. Also, Steve Jobs, Benjamin Franklin, and go on. I don't know if we want to do the politics part of this first, given some of the comments that he saw overnight.
Yeah, but none of that was surprising. You can see that we talked about this before, that he was going to get frustrated because he doesn't own the federal government. And he's particularly frustrated at this big, beautiful bill that does nothing to try to codify the Doge cuts.
Were you so surprised, though, that he was so public about it, given the relationship he has with the president?
No, the only thing that would ever surprise me about Elon Musk is if he bit his tongue.
In terms of, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, we just intimated, we had a guest intimating someone's going to be a trillionaire. He said, yep, I think we know who it is.
Well, I think that him focusing back on his companies again, he needed
not that far away.
No. And what happens is he has said something interesting, which is, all right, they're not going to cut federal spending.
Right.
I was delusional to think that the interests in Washington would allow that to happen. And he says things that are very weird and forward-looking, but then you have to think about them, which is the only way to solve this is to increase productivity by tenfold, by an order of magnitude. And I'll be able to do that with Optimus the robot, full self-driving cars, Neuralink, and if I focus on that, I can solve the problem by increasing productivity.
And we never cut spending, we just increase.
Well, I mean, he just feels Washington will never cut spending.
Right.
So the stock has moved on the back of this idea that he's now back sleeping on the factory floor, that he's now, and he's one of these people, and you've written about this, when he gets his back up against the wall, or he feels at his point, that's when he sort of pushes ahead even more.
He's like Andrew Jackson, he's made for the storm, he said. When it's calm, things are bad. And he loves sleeping under his desk at the Tesla factory or in the Starship, the new Starship.
But do you consider his back against the wall this time? Because in truth, I mean, we've talked about it, even though, you could argue that the stock wasn't performing the way it was before, it's still the best-selling car in
He can gin up anxiety and gin up the fact that we have to have a maniacal intensity, and that's what he's doing now.
In his recent interview, he said, someone said, what are you talking about? What was fake? And he goes, that I'm a Nazi and give, Heil Hitler. That became, I mean, he has suffered the slings and arrows of media backlash, I'm going to sound like Trump, the likes of which no one has ever seen.
And by the way, he's being sued right now by attorneys general from.
I think his
back's up against.
He was late last night when the Raptor engines of the Starship second stage didn't perform perfectly, and he's sitting there obsessing about that rather than. I mean, by the way, who do you give this interview to when he's attacking this big beautiful bill? He gives it to CBS News.
Funny, yeah. It's interesting.
But the slings and arrows. By the way, they're not suing the president for Doge. They're suing him, which I mean, that's got to be so
I
frustrating.
bet you, even though he has a pretty big mind, he cannot keep up with the number of lawsuits on everything.
Which, more than anything, it's going to be frustrating from the loss of time if you have to go and testify, if you have to go.
I know. I've noticed that in a couple of them he was supposed to testify or even give depositions.
Right.
But, you know, he is going to have a maniacal intensity right now on both Tesla and its self-driving in particular and robo-taxi, and on, I think, Starship. The Starship that went up last night was supposed to have, it's like a Pez dispenser. It's totally amazing. And just take these huge Starlink satellites, the big ones, and soon you'll be able to use Starlink. You won't need your local cell phone carrier. So if you're going to get to be a trillionaire, you got to focus on stuff like that.
So young.
The next, though, 2 months, I imagine we're going to be hearing a lot about robo-taxis as it relates to Tesla. And the maniacal focus that he's going to have, but also the maniacal focus that the media and the public is going to have on whether these cars that are going to be roaming around Austin work.
Exactly. And the problem is they're going to be accidents and problems, as there are with Waymo or robo-taxi. Right. And they may be safer than a human driver, but in the times we discussed it, I'd say it has to be at least 10, maybe 100 times safer, because one person getting killed by a robo-taxi is going to be a lot more news than 100 different accidents.
I haven't studied, maybe you have. What's happened? I mean, Waymo now, which obviously is running cars around San Francisco and LA and all sorts of other places. What is the accident rate at this point? Do you know if it's actually...
It's not that high. There's a major difference between the Waymo and the robo-taxi, let's call it, which is Waymo does it with mapping. So it has to keep the map of this very circumscribed area in San Francisco exactly updated at all times. And they, you start saying, I come from New Orleans, you have a map of a street, and the next day it's got a huge pothole. But they have to keep doing that. Whereas Teslas do it only with cameras, no LiDAR.
Right, no LiDAR, no radar, right.
And that will make it so that it can be done universally.
And therefore you think long term, that's the real opportunity set for him.
Huge, if you get it to work, and I suspect he will get it to work, and I don't think he went into government to help his businesses, but it does help his business that he's let us say, reduce the power of the National Highway Transportation Safety Board and those type of regulatory agencies.
What do you think the chances are? I was talking to a venture capitalist the other day who was saying, what do you think the chances are that XAI and the AI operation ultimately gets merged up with Tesla?
I think it's going to happen. And I think it's going to happen because Musk, even in my book, when he's starting XAI, he's talking about, okay, these chatbots are fine, but what you need is real world AI. You need to be able to not only take all the text that's ever been written, all the tweets that have been, but all the videos from Teslas and all the Optimus robots seeing and the hearing. And you will have real world AI, and once again, that'll be one order of magnitude increase from what we're looking at now. And he feels the reason he wants a big pay increase, whatever, is he feels he has to control any company that's doing AI, and I suspect eventually he'll find
two
it.
related. One.
Most drivers don't know that they can buy out their lease because it's not really talked about, right? It's not really talked about at the dealership. So the dealership always is wanting to sell a new car. So
Musk also adding he thinks Tesla's autonomous driving technology will be safer than that of Alphabet-owned Waymo. Good day yesterday here on CNBC because Drew Drabosa was able to catch up with Waymo's co-CEO and get her reaction to the interview, and here's Deirdre now as well. So they're going back and forth. Of course, right now Waymo is the only one on the actual road doing rides every day, Deirdre.
Right, with a fleet of about 1,500 cars, and really these are two very, very different visions for the future of autonomy. You heard Musk lay out his vision. He's arguing the driverless cars should mimic humans, and like he said, the road was made for eyes and brains. He says not lasers, but Waymo's co-CEO, Takidra Mohammed, she tells me that the vehicle needs to be better than humans, and that means sensors plus AI. Have a listen.
you have to be able to see at night. You have to be able to have this vision that's better than humans. You're right? Like what we're doing is we're replacing humans. We're not asking you to sit behind the wheel and take over the vehicle at a really vulnerable moment.
Right.
Instead, we're inviting you to sit in the back seat, relax and unwind, and get safely to your destination. That's a very different value proposition, but it's one that requires belts and suspenders, and that's the approach that we've taken.
Yeah, so that value proposition, it centers firmly around safety. They have a safety hub, they have a track record, and reaching 10 million autonomous trips, that is a milestone that reinforces their approach and goes beyond proof of concept. Remember, this is a business, 1,500 cars in the fleet, 250,000 paid rides per week. Mabukama says that every additional trip at this scale, at this point, it is accelerating the rate at which the Waymo driver is learning. While Musk and Mabukama kind of disagree on how to build and deploy driverless tech, though, they do align on national regulation, guys. She said that essentially, you know, they are also hoping for it. And she's actually optimistic that it can be done in this term.
When you're focused on safety, we think that should be at the federal level. And President Trump and Secretary Duffy have both been very supportive of that. I think there's a recognition right now, given how dynamic this space is, that like now's the time to sort of make U.S. innovation a global leader in the autonomous vehicle space.
You know, like I said, she's optimistic that could be done in the next 3-4 years. And finally, guys, in terms of scaling a fleet in the years ahead, there's another big tension point between the two strategies. Yes, Tesla's vertically integrated. It owns the tech, the hardware, eventually the rideshare network. But Waymo is going to be rolling out lower cost fleets, and it is working with Toyota on personal ownership of the Waymo driver. So the next year or so in the robotaxi space is going to be very, very interesting to see how these strategies converge and diverge.
Yeah, and you know, interesting on the price point, of course. I mean, a Waymo does cost a lot more, I believe, Deirdre, than does the Tesla with FSD right now, correct?
Well, it's commercial, right? So you're actually, it depends on what you're looking at, right? If you're looking at Tesla FSD, it's a monthly subscription fee, which you could argue is more expensive if you're using it less than you are taking a Waymo rideshare. The question, I think, at this point is Waymo more expensive than Uber? And yes, but that cost, Mabukama tells me, is going to come down. And, you know, the cost of lighters are coming down, the cost of their vehicles are going to come down as well. So it's sort of more, where will we be a year from now?
Guys, this is super fascinating. And Deirdre, I just want to go back to Waymo specifically, because obviously Alphabet is such a big tech conglomerate. As Waymo starts to get more traction here and build out, and we enter this era we've been talking about for so many years of robotaxis becoming reality in a mainstream way, is there ever a possibility that we see it spun out of Alphabet?
You know, I asked her that exactly. I said, you know, could you operate, because it does feel like Waymo is underappreciated in this whole Alphabet conglomeration. Its last valuation was, I believe, around $45 billion, right? And that is a huge sort of different from what you see Tesla valued as a robotaxi company. She said that right now, you know, they love being under the Alphabet umbrella. It gives them capital, it gives them access, it gives them technology. Who knows in the future? I think that there's analysts on Wall Street and investors who would like to see it spun off, but she didn't allude to any plans for that in any near future.
David, on the flip side, I mean, we see so many synergies between all of Elon Musk's companies, and I thought it was really fascinating. And I realized he maybe demurred in terms of the answer, but when you asked him about the possibility of XAI being absorbed into Tesla too.
Yeah, you know, I asked that in part because, as you know, Morgan, he's been talking about wanting to have a higher level of control at Tesla. That goes back to the dispute around his compensation to a certain extent, which, of course, he hasn't received since 2018 because he hasn't gotten all of those shares. And one way you could imagine, of course, is if they were to actually buy XAI, which he owns the bulk of, then he would get Tesla shares for that ownership, which would take him up. To your point, I don't think that is something that is currently on the table or being considered. And given the losses at XAI right now, how much they're spending, it wouldn't necessarily be something Tesla shareholders might be excited about. But we will be focused on that comp again for Mr. Musk as well. The Delaware Supreme Court is going to be ruling on the denial yet again by Chancellor